My girlfriend said, "You're too broke to be my future." I replied, "Then let's balance that out." 2 years later, I bought the company that rejected me. She texted me congratulations. I replied with silence, the most expensive answer she'd ever earned. Lauren was the kind of woman who made every cafe feel like a runway. I was the guy who still checked the total before tipping. That afternoon the place was packed. College kids on laptops, a line curling out the door, the smell of espresso and burnt caramel. She sat across from me in her tailored beige blazer, phone angled just right to catch the latte art. I thought we were having one of our usual "where are we going" talks. Instead, she took a slow breath, brushed imaginary lint off her sleeve, and said it clearly enough for the whole room to hear. "Alex, I can't keep dragging a man with no ambition." Her coworkers from the PR firm were 2 tables over, pretending not to eavesdrop while filming a story about women knowing their worth. Then came the follow-up line, sharp, rehearsed. "You're too broke to be my future." Laughter like breaking glass. I just nodded once, reached for the check, and slid my debit card across the table. The total, $27.48 plus tip. I signed my name, pushed the receipt toward the edge, and said quietly, "Guess I just bought my freedom." Outside, the Texas heat hit like a wall. I walked to my car, a sun-bleached 2007 Honda with 1 working speaker, and sat there until the sweat dried. 2 years together ended with a punchline. Back then, I was 28, working design contracts at a startup that had already survived 3 layoffs. My title sounded important, product designer, but half the time I was fixing PowerPoints and sleeping under my desk. My credit cards were maxed. My fridge held condiments and hope, but I believed in what I was building. A small design studio that might, someday, stand on its own. Lauren hated that word "someday." She measured life in followers and dinner reservations. Every time her friends booked rooftop tables, she'd drop hints about men who invest in experiences. I invested in domain renewals and caffeine. She wore heels that cost more than my rent. I wore sneakers with paint on them from the prototype boards I built in my living room. We weren't a mismatch at first. In the beginning, she said she admired my drive, loved that I had a vision. But admiration turned to impatience once her friends started comparing engagement rings and weekend trips to Cabo. I offered road trips and gas station snacks. She wanted wine tastings and photo walls. Still, I thought love could meet somewhere in the middle. That's what fools think before the bill arrives. After the coffee shop scene went semi-viral, thanks to a tagged story captioned "When ambition finally speaks up," I stopped checking social media altogether. People love a morality play, and I was the villain who didn't earn enough. A few of our mutual friends texted the classic, "She just wants the best for herself." I didn't reply. That night, I drove loops around Austin until the gas light blinked, parked by Lady Bird Lake, and stared at the skyline reflecting off the water. I kept replaying her tone, business casual, efficient, like cutting an underperforming employee. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was broke. But I realized something else sitting there in that car with the cracked dashboard. I was also free. Free from pretending rooftop cocktails mattered more than quiet mornings. Free from keeping up with people who turned love into a resume. Free to start again, even if starting again meant sleeping on a friend's couch and chasing contracts nobody else wanted. That was the last night I cried over her. The next morning, I made coffee in a chipped mug, opened my laptop, and started a new folder labeled "Rebuild." After that coffee shop execution, I did what any wounded ego does. I vanished. Deleted Instagram, muted every mutual contact, changed my number on freelancing sites so her friends couldn't accidentally forward pity jobs. Silence became my survival plan. Lauren posted a story 2 days later. "Some men live their whole lives as unfinished drafts. ## growth." I laughed once, short, bitter, and closed the app for good. Money ran out faster than pride. I took overnight shifts at a fulfillment warehouse off I-35, 11 to 7, scanning boxes, steel-toe boots, fluorescent lights. Daylight hours were for freelance scraps, landing page tweaks, cheap logo fixes, whatever kept the phone paid. I slept in 4-hour bursts, on a friend's futon that squeaked whenever I exhaled. 3 months blurred into one long gray line. My wrists ached. My eyes burned. But for the first time, no one expected anything polished from me. Manual work stripped noise. Each box I stacked felt like proof I could still build something, even if it wasn't the dream. Then one afternoon, while eating vending machine peanuts in the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a number I half recognized. "Hey, you built our site once, right? This is Eli from Northline. We're spinning off a new project. Need someone who actually understands design. Interested?" I wiped peanut salt on my jeans. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual while my heartbeat punched numbers into my ribs. That call changed the trajectory. We met in a borrowed co-working space, a windowless cube with humming air vents and 2 wobbly chairs. Eli slid a laptop across the table. "Think you can rebuild this?" The site was a disaster, fonts fighting colors, images loading sideways. I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Yeah," I said. "Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours stretched into a week, then a month. Word spread. Another client came, then 2 more. By the time summer hit, we were officially an agency, even if the office was still that cube and the air smelled like burnt coffee. I lived on caffeine and momentum. Paychecks went straight to debt. I kept the Honda alive with duct tape and prayer. My entire wardrobe fit in one duffel. I wasn't chasing comfort. I was chasing credibility. Every invoice paid felt like oxygen. Every positive email. Proof I wasn't the punchline Lauren's friends toasted to. Eli and I built quietly, no investors, no hype. He handled code. I handled design and clients. We promised ourselves 2 things. Never fake numbers, never chase clout. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was building authenticity in an industry addicted to illusion. Year 1 nearly killed us. Nights bled into mornings. I slept under my desk again, but this time it was my desk. We learned taxes from YouTube, contracts from mistakes, leadership from exhaustion. Yet the graph tilted upward, pixel by pixel. By our second spring, we had clients in 3 states and enough revenue to hire staff. I finally replaced the cracked laptop screen I'd been squinting through for a year. Still drove the same beat-up Honda, though. People asked why I didn't upgrade. I'd run a thumb over the worn steering wheel and say, "Because reminders are cheaper than therapy." One evening, after we landed our biggest contract yet, Eli said, "Man, we should celebrate. Maybe that rooftop place on 6th? Fancy cocktails." I smiled. "Nah. Let's grab tacos and call it profit protection." Success, it turned out, didn't feel like champagne. It felt like breathing without debt. For the first time since that humiliating coffee shop scene, I wasn't surviving out of spite. I was building out of peace. And somewhere between invoices and all-nighters, I realized I'd stopped checking for her name in any feed. That silence I'd forced on myself had turned into something sturdier. Foundation. 2 years after that coffee shop humiliation, I finally owned a suit that wasn't thrift store polyester. Navy wool, tailored shoulders, real cuffs. It felt strange to see myself in the mirror and not flinch. That morning, Eli and I walked through the glass doors of Northline Digital, the very company that once ghosted my job application. Back then, their HR manager had smiled politely and said, "We're looking for candidates who are financially stable." I'd nodded, thanked her, and gone back to eating dollar store ramen. Now our agency was buying their assets for cents on the dollar. We rode the elevator to the 12th floor, same hallway where I'd once stood rehearsing answers about 5-year plans. Only this time my name was on the purchase agreement. The receptionist looked up, half recognizing me, then blinked when she saw the logo on my badge. In the conference room, the air was thick with polite defeat. Their CFO explained declining ad revenue, shrinking clients, layoffs. I listened, calm, pen tapping the contract header with my company's name. When he finished, I signed in neat black ink, no flourish, no speech. Eli grinned. "Guess that makes it official." It did. I just acquired the firm that once told me I wasn't worth hiring. After the meeting, I lingered by the same window I used to stare through years ago, watching traffic crawl along the freeway. Same skyline, Same sunlight bouncing off the glass towers, but everything else had shifted. Back then, I'd felt invisible. Now I was the ghost that came back with paperwork. On the elevator ride down, my phone buzzed. Congratulatory texts from staff. A LinkedIn notification announcing the merger. Underneath, comments stacked. Inspiring journey. Proof that hard work pays off. I smiled but didn't reply. Online praise felt hollow compared to the quiet satisfaction of paying every bill on time and knowing no one could revoke my seat at the table. That night we toasted with cheap whiskey in paper cups, sitting on the floor of the new office surrounded by unpacked monitors. Eli raised his cup. To the ones who counted us out. I clinked mine against his. To staying underestimated. We laughed, tired and free. Yet success has a strange echo. It brings back the ghosts of the moments that built it. Driving home, the city lights blurred into the windshield, and I remembered the old Honda breaking down on 45th Street, the nights sleeping under buzzing fluorescent lights, the taste of vending machine peanuts. All of it still lived inside the man in the suit. I parked outside my apartment, sat in the dark, and exhaled. No audience, no applause, just the quiet hum of the engine cooling. I thought about how ambition used to feel like drowning. Now it felt like breathing underwater, controlled, deliberate, earned. Before bed, I opened the old rebuild folder on my laptop. Inside were screenshots of early invoices, the first client email, even the scribbled logo concept drawn on a napkin. I hovered over delete for a long minute, then closed the lid instead. Some relics deserve to stay, not as trophies, but as proof of what almost broke you. Next morning, news outlets picked up the acquisition. Local startup acquires legacy firm. They used my photo from the signing, smile small, eyes tired. Comments flooded in from people who'd never returned my calls when I was broke. Funny how success rewrites history. Still, I wasn't bitter. Just done. I'd already won the only fight that mattered, the one with myself. Standing in that corner office, sunlight cutting across the polished desk, I realized the full circle wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition. The man who once begged for a chance now built doors for others. And for the first time in years, I felt still enough to breathe. It happened on a Thursday night, right after the acquisition press release went live. My phone buzzed across the desk, screen lighting up with a name I hadn't seen in 2 years. Lauren. Hey, I heard about Northline. You actually bought them? That's amazing. I'm proud of you. For a moment, I just stared at the message. Same punctuation style, overly friendly, lowercase hey, a casual hook meant to look harmless. My chest tightened, but not from nostalgia. More like recognition. I'd seen that tone before, usually when someone remembered your value after the invoice cleared. Her profile picture glowed on the screen. Same smile, new city skyline behind her. Austin's influencer crowd had swallowed her whole. The caption on her last public post read, "Manifest what you deserve." Another text followed. "Maybe we could grab coffee? Just to talk." The irony landed like déjà vu coffee, our beginning and ending ritual. Only now the stakes had inverted. I didn't reply, didn't block her either. Just locked the phone and stared out the office window, watching the city pulse with Friday night noise. Success has a way of attracting old echoes. I wasn't going to let one in. Still, curiosity is a persistent ghost. Later that night, I checked her feed through a business account. Same curated perfection. Beach trips, brand collaborations, fitness reels, but I noticed something missing. The trainer boyfriend she'd flaunted a year after our breakup. Gone from the frame like he'd been edited out of her highlight reel. I closed the tab and poured a drink. Some doors don't slam, they dissolve. The next morning, my assistant dropped by with printouts and a grin. "You're trending on LinkedIn. Northline acquisition post, 50,000 impressions overnight." I laughed, almost choking on my coffee. Trending. The word used to sound like salvation. Now it felt like static. I'd spent years trying to build substance, not spectacle, and yet the world loved a headline. Among the comments were predictable claps from people who once ghosted me. "Always knew you'd make it. Such an inspiration." Lies wrapped in emojis. I scrolled until I hit one from Lauren M. Verified checkmark, public account. Some people just needed a little push to find their purpose. So proud of your growth, Alex. Underneath, a thread of strangers debated whether we were still together. Someone even wrote, "Power couple energy." Eli saw it before I did. He poked his head into my office, smirking. "Man, is that the coffee shop girl? The one with the rooftop obsession?" "Yeah. She's trying to ride your press wave." I shrugged. "Let her. Everyone needs a PR win." That weekend I drove out of town, no destination, just miles. The road always tells the truth. Somewhere between Waco and a forgotten diner, I realized I didn't hate her anymore. Hate requires energy, and she'd taken enough of mine already. What remained was indifference polished into peace. Sunday night, another ping. Still hoping we can catch up. Maybe this time, my treat. I typed one sentence, then deleted it. Silence, I decided, was the only language she couldn't twist. Instead of replying, I drafted an internal memo about mentoring local design students. A program for people who'd been told they weren't stable enough. That, I figured, was the real closure, turning humiliation into opportunity. When I finally powered off my phone, the screen reflected back a version of me that didn't need to win anymore. Sometimes the past doesn't knock for forgiveness. It knocks to see if the locks still work. Mine did. 3 days after that last message, my phone started vibrating again. LinkedIn notifications, tagged comments, mentions I hadn't asked for. Lauren had posted a photo of her at the same coffee shop where she'd ended us 2 years ago. Same corner table, same cup angled just right for the foam heart. Caption read, "Some people need failure to find themselves. Some need success. Hashtag full circle hashtag gratitude." The algorithm loved it. Dozens of mutuals liked the quote. One of her colleagues even wrote, "You've always had such class, girl." Eli sent me the screenshot with a laughing emoji. "Is that about you?" "Probably," I said. "What are you gonna do?" "Nothing." Because silence, I'd learned, is harder than any comeback. That evening, the agency's open space lights reflected off the windows like ghosts of earlier nights when we'd worked until dawn. I scrolled through client reports, half listening to Eli humming over code, and realized how steady everything felt. There was money in the bank, health insurance for staff, even a snack budget. The kind of stability I used to think only belonged to other people. Still, the post dug at me, not the words but the setting. That coffee shop had become her stage and my origin story. Seeing her repurpose it into self-branding material felt like watching someone monetize your trauma. I drove by after hours. The sign glowed faintly through fogged glass. Different baristas, same counter. I parked, didn't go in, just watched strangers laugh over lattes where I'd once lost a relationship. 2 years of distance condensed into that single pane of glass. I exhaled, turned the key, and drove away. Closure sometimes looks like a green light. Monday morning brought new noise. A tech blog ran a feature on our acquisition, quoting one of my old design teachers, "Alex always had potential. He just needed the right environment." Lauren commented again under the article, "Proud is an understatement." Eli burst out laughing. "She's determined to be part of your hero arc. She can narrate all she wants." I said, "I'm not auditioning." We spent the rest of the day finalizing contracts with a healthcare startup. Mid-meeting, my phone buzzed, unknown number. I let it ring out. Later, voicemail transcribed automatically, "Hey, it's Lauren. I just wanted to apologize for, well, everything. Maybe we could talk off camera, no posts." I deleted it without listening to the end. People assume forgiveness is for the other person. It isn't. It's the moment you stop revising the same memory. That night, I walked along the river. The city hummed in neon and distant bass. For the first time, success didn't taste like revenge. It tasted like quiet water and clean air. I thought about how far I'd come from that broke designer who counted quarters for gas. The irony. Now that I could afford any dinner she'd ever wanted, I didn't want the table. Back home, I placed my phone face down on the desk, opened a new project file, and wrote the header, "Next chapter." Under it, one line, "Build without noise." A week later, Lauren posted again. Another motivational quote. Another round of applause. Her world still revolved around perception. Mine finally revolved around peace. Eli joked, "You sure you don't want to clap back? Maybe post something poetic?" I smiled. Already did. It's called payroll. Silence, once forced on me, had become the loudest proof of all. That I'd rebuilt my life so quietly it thundered. 6 months later, I moved north. Seattle fit the version of me that Austin never could. Gray skies, clean lines, people who kept their heads down and built things that lasted. The agency ran well enough to let me work remotely 3 days a week, so I rented a modest house by a lake just outside the city. White cedar siding, creaky dock, smell of rain through pine. No luxury, no audience, just stillness. Every morning I brewed coffee in silence, sat on the porch wrapped in an old hoodie, and watched mist lift off the water like breath leaving a sleeping giant. Sometimes a heron landed on the dock. Sometimes nothing happened at all. That was the miracle. Nothing demanded to be posted. The Honda finally gave up one morning, transmission gone on the highway. I left it at a mechanic's lot and bought a used Tacoma. Cash, no financing. The paperwork felt ceremonial. A small rebellion against the version of me who once begged card companies for extensions. I filled the house slowly. Thrifted desk, second-hand couch, shelves of client samples and books I'd never had time to read. Each object earned its place. Felt like breathing after years of holding air in. One evening Eli called from Austin. "Dude, you're a ghost. People think you retired." "Maybe I did," I said. "From performing." He laughed. "You sound peaceful. Scary." "I'm just balanced." After we hung up, I sat on the floor with a beer and thought about that word, balanced. For so long, my life tilted toward proving something. To Lauren, to investors, to whoever thought ambition meant dollar signs. Every project, every late night had been an argument against the words no ambition. And somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten the argument was optional. Lauren popped up one last time, or maybe her echo did. A mutual sent me a screenshot of her new podcast announcement. Redefining Success, How Heartbreak Builds Empires. Episode 1 teased a story about turning pain into purpose. I didn't listen. Let her monetize the narrative. I'd already lived the reality. On a quiet Sunday, I walked downtown for groceries. The cashier recognized my name on the card. "Hey, aren't you the guy who started that design firm? My cousin freelances there. Says it's the best job he's ever had." That meant more than any headline. Creating stability for someone else, that was the real win. Later, I sat on the porch as the sun slid down behind the fir trees, the lake turning gold at the edges. I thought about Lauren again, but not with anger. More like gratitude. She was right in her own way. I wasn't on her level. I'd outgrown it. Not by money, not by revenge, but by understanding that self-worth isn't a salary. It's the quiet certainty that you can stand alone, build from nothing, and never need applause to prove it. The phone buzzed once. Eli sending photos of the new office expansion. I smiled, typed back "proud of you, man," and powered it off. In the stillness, I realized something simple. Every loss I'd once cursed had been an introduction to balance. The kind that doesn't announce itself, doesn't trend, doesn't need witnesses. I sipped the last of my coffee, the lake now dark glass reflecting a single porch light. She wanted someone who could afford her future. I became someone who could afford peace. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is the quiet life they'll never be invited to see.